afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Christina Fox, the CEO of Tech Alliance of Southwestern Ontario, a place for dreamers, innovators, and world-changing ideas. As the province of Ontario's Regional Innovation Centre for London and Southwestern Ontario, we're focused on building tomorrow's globally competitive innovation economy that enables entrepreneurship, spurs accelerated growth, attracts ambitious talent, and new companies. Before we get started, I'm going to share a few key points. Everyone on this call is muted, and we will go through our roundtable discussion with all of our panelists. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A feature down below in the Zoom call. We'll get to your questions as best as we can with the questions that we have prepared for some of our panelists today. We also have a rapid fire towards the end of that, so I think you'll enjoy yourself. This webinar, of course, is going to be recorded and will be available after the call, and we'll be sure to send that out with our notice post-call. To begin, nothing we once thought about the future of work and business could have prepared us for the kind of rapid, relentless change that our innovation economy has experienced in recent history. Despite disruption, Southwestern Ontario innovators, entrepreneurs, and industry have adapted with urgency to create extraordinary solutions under circumstances that once felt impossible. In London and area, we're starting to make the future of work for us. If you're an entrepreneur new to e-commerce or radical change agent in your company who's fully committed to contemporary models of digital marketing and online selling, you're in for an amazing chat today. We are so pleased to bring together champions and experts to provide you with quick and easy insight on gold standard practices for increasing market demand and sales conversions while deploying reach and strong UX for prospective buyers or your loyal customers. I'm really pleased to be introducing our panelists this afternoon, starting with Steve Karpenko. Steve is the Senior Business Advisor for the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, Job Creation and Trade, who works with small and medium businesses through challenging financial times, providing advice and guidance on what the Ontario government funding programs are available. Welcome, Steve. We also have with us Egan Chung, who's the Director of Product at Shopify, who leads a multi-channel team and helps over 1 million merchants grow sales using the most effective ways to reach buyers. Also joining us is Kim Atkinson, Director and co-founder of Ontario SEO, who oversees communication and digital success for all of their clients to create effective marketing campaigns across a wide range of industries. Also joining us is Phil Smith, the Amazon leader at 3M Canada, who heads up content creation and demand generation for 3M's Amazon account. Phil also teaches e-commerce and retail management at Fanshawe College. Welcome, Phil. Corey DeBay is the VP Marketing at Northern Commerce Inc. and is intricately involved in idea generation and strategic planning at Northern and consistently challenges the Northern team to deliver ideas and strategies that push boundaries of innovation and performance. Welcome. Also joining us is Simon Hall, who is Partner and Brand Experience Director at Human Brand Experience, who orchestrates unique brand-focused customer experience programs for a growing list of clients. Welcome, everybody. Is that not a rock star panel that you've ever seen? Awesome, and I think we've got everybody visible to us now. And so for the next sort of 30 to 45 minutes, we've got a number of different questions for each of our panelists. Some have been pre-selected based on experiences that our panelists have and the strength that they bring to this dialogue. So the first question is actually for Phil. So we're going to start with you, Phil. The pandemic will certainly impact buying behaviors, customer experience, brand trust, and loyalty now and in the future. So Phil, what major trends and new purchasing behaviors are you seeing in the market already? And for example, how will that change what you teach your students at Fanshawe and next fall?
Yep, thanks, Christina. And I think everybody's probably going to say the same thing as I am, where the traffic increases that we're seeing right now are in the hundreds or even thousands of %. So that just means that there's more people online buying. There's people that were shopping there already. They're just buying more. And I think you're probably going to actually run into a lot of people that maybe in the past bought like a book online or some electronics online. But now they've decided, hey, you know what? I can buy my toilet paper online, or I can buy my toothpaste online, things they wouldn't have thought of before. So that's a pretty major change in the way people are doing it. And if they're doing it for the first time, they might be doing that click and collect experience for the first time, but they also might just be getting that one-day delivery on Amazon Prime for the first time, and they're going to get hooked on that. So the long-term implications of that is that we're going to have this halo effect. Even as stores start to reopen, the traffic increases that we're seeing are still way higher than we have ever seen them. So major brands, manufacturers, retailers, they are going to look at that and say, how do I take advantage of that? Like, how do I take advantage of that extra traffic? And it's just going to be a content gold rush, I think. There's going to be people after talent that can do the content writing, graphic artists, videographers, just digital marketing in general. And that's what I'll be telling these students at Fanshawe, which is you're coming into this market right now that is going to be in extremely high demand if you have the right skills. So you need to prepare for it.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm going to throw it out to the other panelists. Maybe Egan or Corey, if you guys want to jump in and talk about any major trends that you're seeing that are the same or different than what Phil's just described.
Yeah, so from, sorry, yeah. The good old Zoom. So yeah, from our side, what we are seeing is, yeah, very similar to what Phil said. Like, a lot of people are changing their behavior to focus on online. I think what you're going to see is that a lot of brands and retailers are going to start investing obviously more heavily into those online channels. What you've seen is a lot of like proof of concept happen over the past couple months, where maybe it was a sub channel of sales for a lot of brands and retailers, and it became one of their leading, if not their only source of revenue. So they understand now the importance and the efficacy of selling in an e-commerce world. I think what you're also going to see, though, is that brands have invested a lot of money into their physical brick and mortar experiences over the past several decades, and they haven't quite done that with their e-commerce experiences. So they're going to start trying to bridge that gap and create sort of more of that seamless transaction experience and the same level of quality and excellence that you might find through one of their brick and mortar retail locations, you're going to now see through their e-commerce channels. So you might see them integrating things like more enriched product data, leveraging new technologies like augmented reality, putting more emphasis on, you know, stronger and better return policies, more customer support systems. So from at least the brand and retailer perspective, that's what we're likely going to see. And then in addition to that, I think what you're going to see as well is a lot more brands going direct to consumer. There's a lot more margin, obviously, when you're selling direct to your customer as opposed to like a wholesale retailer. Which then also adds some flexibility with respect to discounting and pricing. And as we've seen it as well in the past, 60 days or so, it's kind of like Black Friday madness right now, where everyone's sort of discounting. If you don't have a 30% plus discount on your site, you're not staying competitive and you're not fighting to sort of maintain those brand loyal customers.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Corey. Egan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just I'll just add that I think that we're seeing some trends that are really almost like a tidal wave, as Phil put it, in terms of the amount of time that people are spending online. Like the amount of traffic that's going through a lot of the social networks right now is unprecedented, and I think a lot of that is bound to stick around for quite a while. Some of it may taper off a little bit as people, as restrictions start to loosen up and people are able to get outside and spend a little bit less time on their devices. But like Phil said, I think some of the trends and some of the habits that have been established now are going to persist for a long time, and many of those habits have been accelerated by years, maybe decades. And that's going to be a huge landscape of change for entrepreneurs. And as a result, I actually I hope to see a lot more entrepreneurship and innovation that sprouts out as a result of this. And unfortunately, many businesses are going through a hard time as a result of this, but I hope it also spurs on some degree of innovation and change to kind of adapt to the new reality.
Yeah, Kim or Simon, do either one of you want to jump in? Maybe Kim, we'll start with you.
No, I think I just want to, echo what's already been said. The change in competition is something that I think people are going to have to definitely account for, because it's going to be non-traditional competition, or where people were pretty solid in their area. That's definitely going to change. And also supporting the information that clients need online. It's not the people who used to be shopping e-commerce. It's people who are going to have more questions and need more information, and just being set up for that. It's going to be really important.
Thanks, Kim. And Simon, any major trends that you're seeing that are different or the same as others?
Well, I mean, I think with all the talk about the increase in different things online now that they never used to, I think this speaks to how important, the brand of a company really is, because it's really easy to get commoditized out there. There's, Amazon's selling like 300 million plus products. You've got, 1,000 websites, selling toilet paper. I mean, what compels somebody to actually go to your e-commerce website and buy your product? The whole thing is here, you have to have a really strong brand in order to stand out, among the sea of everybody's out there.
Awesome. Okay. And Stephen, anything that you'd like to add on major trends? And then we've got a series of questions that we'll do for each person.
Sure. We've been at this a long time. Like when I started in the e-commerce business in 1997, we were building web stores for the Simpatico platform on Microsoft Merchant Server, and then some supply chain innovation using the web in 2000. So we've been at it a long time. And after all of that kind of adventure and innovation and everything, here we are with pre-COVID, somewhere around 15% of retail sales being online. And now, as everyone else has mentioned, like we've seen these big leaps, and it'll come back down. And some of the studies are saying somewhere between 3 and 6% sort of permanent stickiness. But when you compare 3 to 6% in 3 months versus 15% over the course of 20 years, that's like phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And I guess on the other side of it, you have like the stores that have been relying on walk-by traffic and creating loyal customer bases, and they're still there. And it's kind of like maybe a part of it is right now Advantage big brand with their omni-channel strategy, whether it's Best Buy bringing in third-party retailers and not handling the product, kind of like Alibaba, or Walmart having their own high-volume e-commerce strategy to compete with Amazon, or not necessarily in the US, but in India. Right now kind of advantage there, but over time, maybe it's omni-channel kind of shrinking down and having a micro version of that where the small retailers can get those customers back and like Simon was saying, innovate in some way that they bring their uniqueness in that can't be replicated by the big brands, and then over time we see a shift back to and reestablishing that middle. But e-commerce being a much more major part of it than maybe we've seen in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I like the comments that each of the panelists have made. I think of sort of the stickiness of e-commerce and the habits that myself and others that I know that have been created and accelerated through COVID, and how convenient the buying process can be when I'm thinking of the journey of looking for information, researching what I'm looking for, or just going back to lists of like things that were in my cart before and I just automatically put back into my cart. So much has changed for my own stickiness and buying habits. And I think of sort of the uprise of Shop Local and the opportunity to continue to contribute to local economies and what that means for Main Street businesses as they begin to deploy a more advanced strategy related to e-commerce or ease of that customer journey. So great points made by everybody. I think it sort of lays the land for the next set of questions. So over to you then, Simon, for this question. I'm going to ask you, how do businesses know if e-commerce is the right move for their brand?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things you have to consider, when you're looking at that. And one is, what is it you're actually selling? If you're a business that's 90% service and 10% product, it may not be something that you should go into, or you're actually going to implement that online and be successful at it. The other thing is, how strong is your brand? If you're a store that you're just selling commodity stuff and you decide, I'm going to sell this online because the pandemic has closed my store, good luck with that. There's so many places out there selling probably what you're selling that it's going to be really difficult to compete there unless you're the cheapest. So you need a strong brand in order to demonstrate a differentiator between between all the clutter out there. And the other thing is, can you translate what's unique about your brand online? Can you port over aspects of your customer experience, your uniqueness? If you're known as being a sales expert in your industry, how do you port that over to an online platform successfully, and carry on with your brand promise, and not dilute that by going online? Like an example, with what's going on right now, all the hair salons are closed. So what they're encouraged to do by companies like L'Oreal is, hey, sell sell shampoo to your customers. Well, and that's a great temporary thing, but that's not sustainable strategy for a hair salon, because the hair salon is all about the experience, and you can't translate that experience into an e-commerce strategy. You're selling shampoo. On the expertise of those people, right? So I can buy shampoo on Amazon tomorrow, but a third the price that the hair salon's going to charge, and it's the same product. So for something like that, the experience is in a physical location, and it's going to be really difficult to port that over to an online initiative. And the same as you have like a bricks and mortar store, say you're selling fishing lures, and you've got this really loyal customer base, and they come to you because the guys who sell them behind the counter know online. Are you going to be able to translate that sales expertise and that relationship online with new customers? And I mean, I'm sure these guys' platforms have lots of ways that they can do that. So I don't want to discount that completely, but it's going to be really challenging if that's your edge. It's really hard to repeat that online. And the other final thing is, how much knowledge does it require to buy your product? Do you have a really complex product that you're trying to sell? And that makes it way more difficult to sell online than if you're selling toilet paper or shampoo. So those are the kind of things you need to consider, if you want to take that dive. And then the last thing is, do you have the resources to actually manage this project? And this is not something where you just whip something up on the weekend and put it live and it works. There's a lot of time, effort, money, which these guys I'm sure will expand on later, that's required to actually make it successful.
Okay. That's great, Simon. We had a bit of lagging there, but I think we've got some of the gist of it. And what I think the tail end there is a great segue to Egan, a question for you. As Main Street businesses transform from bricks and mortar to more seamless online transactions, what recommendations do you have in terms of steps that companies should take to gain market competitiveness, but also take into account, the commitment that's required to first deploy e-commerce and then to continue to nurture it so that you have that inbound sales capability?
Yeah, you're right. And Simon brought up some really great points in that not every brick and mortar business is going to be successful in a highly competitive online environment. But we at Shopify, we have seen a huge influx of both our existing brick and mortar merchants who are looking now to spend a lot more time on their online strategy, as well as a huge influx of brick and mortar retailers who hadn't actually ever gotten into the online world before. And I think that's part and parcel of I think we've all seen and we've all probably experienced and taken part in an outpouring of support for businesses with local presence. I think that's just part and parcel of the fact that buyers are looking for authentic and personal commerce experience. And this is one of those things that I expect to also continue post-pandemic, where, I myself, I'm now a loyal customer of many local merchants that I actually didn't really know before. I live here at Dufferin and Bloor near Toronto, and there's tons of them around. And so when I speak to merchants who are making that move, a couple of them, some of my close friends who had restaurants and other food service businesses, one of the things that they've encountered when they first came online was just like the sheer intimidation of it. How do I get started? What do I put up here? I've never done this before. Luckily, obviously, we have tools and others have tools that make that part fairly easy. But some advice that I've been giving to them is, obviously the idea of listing your entire inventory can be a little bit overwhelming. So be a little bit more focused. I think that benefits both them and their buyers, and focusing on listing only your best sellers or the items that you can clear good margin on while shipping locally. They also have the benefit of being able to add additional trust signals to their store, like actually showing the fact that they have a physical location within the city or elsewhere adds a lot of trust to buyers to help with conversion. And then speaking of local delivery, I think that's obviously a huge benefit and it's really picked up, we can see amongst our customers, because if merchants are already serving a local community and they're looking for ways to stay in touch with their loyal customers, then local delivery can be an amazing offering. And that's actually not limited to brick and mortar stores in the city. Many of our customers, and I'm a customer of some of them in southwestern Ontario, actually, who are in the business of custom food delivery and that type of thing, are using some of our tools to be able to specify like postal codes that they will deliver to and schedules that they will deliver on. And so you can put in your order, and they actually use their staff to come. We have a local delivery app that can tell them the routes to go on to deliver things. And I think that's actually a really big benefit, a competitive advantage that a brick and mortar retailer has that a traditional e-commerce player doesn't, that they can really use to their advantage as they move online. And then actually one final note is conversational tools. Because I think somebody had mentioned a little bit earlier, the notion of like, I think it was Simon, you were talking about, many brick and mortar retailers, they rely on relationship sales, the foot traffic coming in and talking to a customer face to face and espousing the benefit of the product. It's not going to work for everybody, but the wonders of modern technology are that there are tools available today where you can actually have that kind of interaction directly off of your website or through channels like Facebook and Google. That once again, I think brick and mortar retailers and merchants, they have this skill set. It's up to them to see if the technology allows them to do that online. But I think if it works for them, it can be a huge tool to increase conversion.
So Egan, can I just do a follow-on question? There was one that came through the Q&A feature about selling complex products online. Do you think you could take a run at that of, how it is that you use the relationship and thought leadership that exists within perhaps a trusted brand or a brick and mortar experience, and how that can come online and the interaction that can happen as it relates to complex selling? And then I think I might also, Phil, tee you up for some of that as well, given the complexity of some of the products that 3M has for sale online. So Egan, can I start with you on that particular question?
Yeah, sure. And I know we have a mix of, obviously at Shopify, we focus more on direct to consumer, but I imagine on this call, we have a mix of both B2B and D2C customers. And so I'm going to guess that this is coming from somebody who's got a kind of a longer sales cycle.
Probably.
Than clicking on a Facebook ad and buying right away. But I think that a lot of the concepts are very similar, which is once you have an expression of interest from someone, how do you capture that expression of interest in a way that you can, again, if it's a complex sale that requires a fair bit of education up front. I've got a visitor. That requires a fair bit of education, then you may need to, you obviously want to capture that expression of interest either through capturing their email, adding them to a nurture program. And yeah, I think that's going to be the same whether you're talking about D2C or B2B, like the principles are the same. And but the tactics may be very different if you're selling something that's tens of thousands of dollars versus hundreds of dollars, obviously.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Phil, could I have you talk a little bit about that as well? And perhaps it is the long sales cycle, perhaps it's about the education that happens before the buying decision, but could you lean into that one as well?
Sure, and I think there's a couple aspects to that because obviously at 3M, we're not doing direct sales. We have channels, and I think probably a lot of our viewers have channels too. So it's about understanding the platform that you're selling on. So yeah, my specialty is Amazon, but if we're talking about Amazon or Walmart or Best Buy or Canadian Tire or whoever it is, all of them are going to have a different back end. So having sort of like a repository of good content that's sort of like not set in stone that you can modify to each of the settings is extremely important. So having a good gallery that fits everybody's content requirements is probably not possible, but having something that's sort of like preloaded that you can modify slightly and upload quickly, that's extremely important. And yeah, we sell sponges, but we also sell some really complex industrial goods. And it's just a matter of assigning resources where it's important. And I mean, I'm sure it'll come up a lot, but if somebody's on your page or somebody's on your website or on your product page on an e-commerce site, you need to be able to answer all of their questions. And that's the good customer experience. Answer all their questions that they might have. And that's just not something that's happening right now. So it's something that I think everybody has to work on.
That's awesome. Thank you. Kim, I'm teeing you up for the next question because we've talked a little bit about brand, a little bit about brick and mortar experience and how to transition that to an online experience, or, why is that important? And I'm going to come to you for a little bit about strategy. So when we talk about strategy for promoting an e-commerce store, how do you best leverage existing customers to increase volume and frequency of sales, and how do companies attract new customers given that they might not be relying on traditional footprint or foot traffic?
I think that's a great question. Existing repeat customers can be your most valuable customers, so they deserve that special attention. If you have a decent database, email marketing should definitely be a focus, anywhere from pre-launch specials to ongoing loyalty, or as you just talked about, if you have to change some of the descriptions or change some of the products that you're offering, making sure that's getting out to them. Email marketing consistently delivers that above average conversion. If you're selling to consumers, you should use what you know about your existing customer base. So you might find those postal codes or that geographic area is working well for you, and see what you can do to reach more customers like them. Facebook lookalike audiences obviously is a great way to do that. And of course, existing customers can be great evangelists for your business, spreading the word for you on social channels. So it can take a little bit of work, but it can definitely be extremely effective. And then also, maybe looking at that remarketing and bringing that into your process and your campaigns.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. So now, even when you talk about remarketing and the customer journey, we're going to shift to a few questions related to the customer journey. And we know that experience is indeed paramount to creating a delightful CX, from search to education to checkout and delivery. So Corey, a question for you. In understanding demands from customers, how do you approach product fulfillment?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to it from a couple different angles. I think there's probably a lot of people here that maybe are just like, are wondering, how do I even fulfill orders when they start coming through? Do I just ship it directly from my store? Or, and you're going to have sort of different variety of those groups of businesses as well. So you might have this sort of mom and pop shop that has a physical brick and mortar retail location, just selling products directly from their store. And then you might have maybe a larger, more established business that has warehousing capabilities and all of those sorts of factors as well. One thing I would say is, especially for local businesses, is as you are approaching that sort of fulfillment aspect, going back to what Simon said about just having a better brand experience and sort of differentiating yourself from the crowd. Like an easy win is to just incorporate some sort of personalization and sort of localized aspect into the actual delivery and fulfillment itself. So, using specific, handwritten notes or whatever it might be tied into your actual orders themselves. That's going to sort of help with that existing customer base as well. If you start sort of creating that personalized experience from the outset and building a lot of those sort of brand loyalists through your e-com experience, then you might start getting social shares and whatever else may come with that as well. But even just from the outset of like, how do I fulfill an order? There are a few different options available. Again, one is just sort of do the fulfillment yourself. You can contact basically Canada Post, Purolator, FedEx. They'll set you up with a machine, stickers, everything. And it's actually quite easy to just fulfill like a low volume of orders directly from your store. But there's also sort of third-party providers as well that will do that for you. And you can actually work out with them, certain branded boxing and things like that are still going to create a good customer experience. You can then include certain marketing materials within, and they'll actually work that directly out with you, and then just include that within their sort of pick, pack, shipment pricing. Another option available to new e-commerce retailers as well is you might already have suppliers that are sending out direct to customers. So incorporating maybe even like a drop ship component to your business may actually help to create a better customer experience by just being able to offer more products throughout your catalog itself. So how a drop ship experience would work is essentially that you can work directly with your supplier to then be able to process an order through, let's say, your Shopify site, send them that order that they've actually fulfilled directly from their warehouse to that customer. Now, the one caution there is that when you start getting into that, you might have, disjointed branded experiences because you have some products being fulfilled from a supplier, for some from yourself. But again, it's just a matter of sort of working that out with the suppliers and fulfillment centers to make sure that they're using your boxes and sending your marketing materials and those sorts of things as well. And then the one sort of benefit that people can use as well of just being a local business or having a brick and mortar location is buy online, pick up in store. So one thing we know is that everyone is typically impatient when it comes to shopping online. So if I can get it any bit faster, I probably will choose that option. So especially in a local setting, that's where you can kind of sort of edge out the competition. If you are competing with more of like a national or international business or Amazon or whatever it may be, just by having like a buy online, pick up curbside in today's setting, or buy online, pick up in store when stores start opening up again, that alone should give you a bit of a competitive edge. What we've seen with a lot of our customers, so some of our retail customers have 100, 200, 300 locations, and just by enabling that one feature of buy online, pick up in store alone has resulted in 20-30% increases in conversion rates on their sites.
Wow, that sounds incredible. And I think of that too. If I have the buy online pickup at curbside, it gives me a reason to get out of the house, maybe get some steps in, or have a nice drive in the car with some tunes on. So I can imagine the impatience certainly creates some of that experience too, the feeling of going to pick up the purchase. Thanks for sharing that, Corey. I'm going to shift it over to you, Phil, then. What other steps would you recommend to small and medium businesses to enhance customer experience on top of part of what Corey has shared already?
Yeah, and I guess I touched on it a bit in my last answer, which is that answering all of the customers' questions. And I'll stick with Amazon here because that's my specialty for the moment. But when somebody arrives on your Amazon page, especially if they're on mobile, which is about 50% of people now, the galleries is what they're interested in, those 6 images and the video. So if you can present your features and benefits, you can overcome objections, and you can close a sale in 6 images and in about 20 seconds and maybe a video, that's really what people should be doing. That is a good customer experience. They never have to go to another site to get extra information. They're not getting something they don't expect in the actual box. They don't have to return it. And it's just, especially if they like it the first time, if they're on a subscription or something, they're just going to keep buying it forever. So and everybody's probably going to say the same thing. It's that seamless transition. I go there, I look at it, I like it, I buy it, and I keep it forever because it's exactly what I wanted. And that's what we should be after. The days of putting something on Amazon with the front back white image and buying some ads and watching the money roll in are long gone. It's extremely competitive. So you want that great customer experience for every single product that you're trying to sell there.
Awesome. So the next 2 questions are related to the money rolling in, or the money that you have to sort of put out. So Kim, for you, what guardrails do you suggest for a realistic budget for omni-channel promotion of a new e-commerce experience or new product on an already deployed e-commerce space?
I think the most important thing to do is don't just set a budget because that's what you think you can afford, or what a friend did, or what you think is acceptable. You need to, it's a little bit of math, but you have to work backwards from your sales targets to calculate your initial budget. So digital is measurable. So with a sales target and an average conversion rate, you should be able to set a budget that's going to work. So for example, if you need to sell 1,000 units each month and your conversion rate is at about 5%, you're going to need 20,000 qualified visitors each month. If you have to drive every single one of them through digital ads at about $3 a click, your advertising is going to be about $60,000. So you need to take everything into account. So you need to make sure your budget can realistically ensure that you're going to meet your goals and it's going to be profitable. It's also important that you know where your customers are in the sales funnel. So you know what percentage of your budget should go to each channel. Are some existing clients? Are some that you just want them to know you're out there? So ideally you will have this information from your customer base. Sometimes it's a little bit of detective work, a little bit of snooping around, and a little bit more that you need some budget for handling after sales service. That was one of the questions that was brought up. You need to be able to handle returns, answering the questions, the cost of staffing that, and anything else that comes in. So spend money on loyalty and you boost your future sales. So that's another important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a great reference to the questions that are coming in too. So I'm going to actually shift back over to you, Corey, about any other miscellaneous costs that companies should consider as they're incorporating e-commerce strategy into their Main Street business operation or otherwise. Just some of the things that Kim did a quick evaluation there at the cost to attract a customer and whether or not that's worthwhile versus nurturing an existing loyal customer base. So it's different for everybody, but are you able to just go through a couple of points on other miscellaneous or things to know because you've been in the business and have coached and advised people through the process?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's definitely a lot more than people consider when they first approach e-commerce. Like, it's, hey, I got to pay for a website and there's a monthly fee, right? Like, it's a lot more than just that. There's a sort of total cost of ownership with respect to you actually have like your initial build on getting an e-commerce site set up, which typically is one of your most extensive costs. Then you have like your monthly platform and hosting fees, your like ongoing maintenance, because even once you get your site up, you're probably going to have to make some adjustments to it. There's like third-party software fees with respect to if you're using email marketing or chat services. A lot of these do have like free and cheap ways of getting into it. So it's not that they're necessarily substantial, but every little sort of fee adds up, especially as you start doing higher volumes. And then there's some sort of like transactional related costs associated. So even things like payment gateway fees. So if you're typically, let's say, a cash based business, you're probably not used to paying as much through certain payment gateways. So like 2 to 3% of each transaction going to like a payment gateway provider to actually fulfill that order. Also then considering things like if you're going to be offering discounts, that's going to cut into your margin. The actual sort of order management aspect of it, having somebody on hand to actually do, let's say, customer service or returns, or if you have an order in your error, there's shipping fees, obviously. So picking, packing, shipping your order, the packaging that goes included within it. So a lot of sort of miscellaneous costs, and that's not even covering all of them. But definitely one of the largest ones is sort of what Kim was touching on, is really your marketing and customer acquisition costs. I think at the end of the day, what you have to be prepared for is that you've invested in an e-commerce platform, you have an existing, customer base that may or may not be buying from you online, and at some point you're going to tap that base out. And just simply getting a site up and running, it's not like if you build it, they will come scenario. You're going to likely have to be investing into some sort of acquisition strategy. So a lot of the times that's coming in the form of digital advertising, and these could be substantial costs with respect to your overall revenue. So typically what we're seeing, especially in the early stages, if you don't necessarily have like a fully strong brand built out, or if you don't have, let's say, a lot of existing customers going through brick and mortar retail that are now simply just changing their purchasing behavior to online, you're going to have to sort of fill the top of your funnel with new customers. And again, through digital advertising, you have to then do the math to figure out what is your target acquisition cost. So a lot of times we're working with our clients to figure out what are all those costs that I just sort of mentioned, the sort of marginal costs that go into each sale. So shipping costs, discounts, looking at the actual cost of goods sold to determine at the end of the day, I have X amount of margin with a sale. And then I have to determine what is my average order value. And then from that, then I know roughly how much I can actually pay for a sale. So that's one of the largest factors that people don't necessarily consider, is that I actually have to pay to get customers to come through the site itself. I think everyone sort of goes in with a very optimistic feel that, okay, once I get my product catalog online, people are just going to start buying it. I have a lot of, maybe it's like existing customers that'll promote it. At the end of the day, at some point in time, it's going to sort of plateau or start to trail off. So it's really understanding those sort of like unit economics to be able to understand, can you actually thrive within the e-commerce environment, knowing that you have X% of margin available to you and that you're going to have to invest money into acquisition to sort of get that revenue rolling. So
that's great. There's a couple comments in the Q&A. One was, the idea of having like live human beings making touch points after the sale, having live chat capabilities. And I think those are all really strong points. There's some commentary about, incredible work happens in the top of the funnel in the customer journey. And then the customer has the experience on your on your site and the sale is made and there's a delivery, and sometimes it's the post delivery and that end-to-end experience. So if you're expecting then repeat sales, how are you delivering? How are you identifying the customer journey from beginning to end? And the end is really just the opportunity for some loyalty. So as a couple of you have described, either the subscribe where you've got a customer for life on that, or something related to that buying experience and the returning experience. And are you actually, with your brand promise, delivering right to the end? And so that takes me to Simon, a question for you related to brand. And then we're going to shift over to Stephen, because he's got some really interesting concepts related to Ontario Together, and talk to us a little bit about some of the work that's been done there and the opportunities. So Simon, this question is for you. Unstoppable brands make a compelling promise and back it up with an extraordinary experience. So that's much of what we've talked about today. Even when we've talked about the cost and the minutia involved and the decisions that you make and how you go from brick and mortar to online, often it comes back to some of that early brand experience and the ongoing brand experience. So how do Main Street businesses or smaller medium enterprise wrap their head around the concept of the brand experience if they want to add to their current customer offering? What are some of the things that you would recommend through brand to expand the customer offering?
Well, I mean, to be successful in any business, whether you're online or offline, it's basically your marketing makes a promise and your experience follows through with that. So that's basically what builds customer loyalty, whether you're online or offline or whatever. And you really need to figure out, why are people loyal to you now? If you're a company that has a dealer network and you have representatives that service those accounts, why are those people staying with you now? Is it because your sales guys are really knowledgeable about the industry? Is it because you're the cheapest? Is it because they're the best looking? You need to determine exactly what it is that, and then try and migrate that online. And that's the challenge for a lot of places, is how can you migrate those characteristics that make you unique offline online? And maybe it's not a full-blown e-commerce platform. Maybe maybe it's a combination of things where you have some of your process online and some of it not, because again, a lot of businesses rely on relationships with their customers. If you talk to any traditional do business with this person because they like that person, that's really hard to translate online. I mean, you can do, I'm sure there's a lot of options that can attempt to replicate that, but at the end of the day, that's really challenging for a lot of businesses to do. And the other question you have to ask is, how much does your business rely on interaction as opposed to transaction? And like I said, with relationships, it's an interaction with the customer. If you're buying toilet paper online, it's primarily a transaction, and that's fine if that's how it works for you. But many of these businesses, especially B2B, it's relationship building, and you need to tread really carefully on how to maintain that relationship and keep those customers. And if you have existing customer base now, their expectation is that if they move to an online platform with you, that they're going to get the same experience they got from you previously. So how you need to really be careful and figure out how you can actually replicate that online.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you, Simon. So now I'm going to shift, Stephen, to a couple of questions really specific for you. Stephen, of course, is from the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and an expert on the call about the Ontario Together Fund. OTF provides funding in 3 main streams, focused on personal protective equipment, products and services, for technology-driven products and digital solutions to help businesses reopen safely, and certainly about ideas which businesses or research organizations can share that can help Ontarians.
Right.
And of course, Stephen joins this call because there is quite a bit of interest and emphasis on e-commerce as it has related to the Ontario Together Fund. So Stephen, I have 2 questions for you to start, and I may have some follow-on questions.
Mm-hmm.
What opportunities are there with the Ontario Together Fund for e-commerce initiatives?
Well, it's interesting the way the fund works, Christina, and you described the 3 streams. So it's a $50 million fund in total, and the way we were managing the innovation stream was through different challenges, and I think we're up to 8 now, and they've been related to volunteerism, for example. But one of them was e-commerce, and we had that one open, and It was basically submit your ideas, your proposals related to getting companies through, back open for business post COVID-19. And it was surprising how few proposals there were related to e-commerce. And I don't know whether that was because there appears to be a lot of solutions in the marketplace already, whether it's Shopify or more of the open source solutions, WooCommerce or whatever, that people are basically saying, hey, that's covered, and we'll look at something else, or we're busy doing our other things. So it was surprising how few innovations were proposed along the lines of e-commerce, and that's surprising for me, coming out of that as such a big part of my background. And coming back to Phil's point, everyone's made amazing points about what it takes to become a successful e-commerce entrepreneur. And prior to my time in the government, I was in the nutritional supplements business, and we had our Shopify store and everything, and there were just so many moving parts. And when you think about all the comments that were made by the panel that don't have to do with putting product in a customer's hand or accepting a return, as an entrepreneur, you have to worry about all those other things. And then you introduce this new channel of e-commerce, and in a way, some of it's being mandated by the marketplace to say, hey, I can't come to your store. How can you serve me online? It's like, wow. And so I was really surprised by that. So if there are any entrepreneurs on the line who are in the tech space and want to come back to the fund, and it's Ontario, just Google Ontario Together Fund and submit your idea. But when you look at one of the other channels, which is the procurement of personal protective equipment, so we had a stream that was just based on asking manufacturers if they can pivot their capabilities and create face shields instead of the other plexiglass products they had, or gowns and masks, and probably everyone's heard the story about Canada Goose producing gowns now, and they're not the only, the Wuxley Collective, they're doing the same thing. But anyway, the point is that when the proposals we're looking at related to PPE, it's almost like it's in its infancy. And I kind of extend that same observation to e-commerce, where we're kind of, almost had this huge setback. And the question is it going to take 3 years to get back to normal, or 10? And all these things we've talked about. And then, of course, there's disruptions up the line in the supply chain globally, working backwards, that need to be sorted out as well. But just in terms of our experience with the Ontario Together Fund, and just encouraging entrepreneurs out there to maybe look at their capacity and say, hey, there's other things that I can do. But the e-commerce one's a tough nut to crack. I mean, again, coming back to Phil, I agree with the observation that there are gaps opening up in terms of the need for specific skills related to, and a lot of creative related to product presentation and writing copy to help sell product, or Kim's comments about the sales funnels and the skills that are required there. That I just see more and more kind of pent up or need for that if we're going to move forward into this world of e-commerce, because the business owners and the entrepreneurs have so much to deal with, especially right now when it comes to cash flow concerns and covering basic commitments, that something else needs to fill that void.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. So what I'm hearing from you too is, when you visit the Ontario Together Fund, certainly be looking at the space where it says submit an innovation or submit an idea. And from there can be some dialogue with yourself and the folks who are administering that fund, and can provide some guardrails, advice, and coaching on how the idea or innovation could be nurtured through some additional funding to really support either safe reentry or just an accelerated opportunity for Main Street businesses.
That's right, and the process basically goes from a general application online, which is a fairly speedy first step, and then if the innovation or idea kind of meets the basic criteria, then it's then handed off to like a case advisor who works with the company, and the commitment is within 4 to 6 weeks to turn that around, and whether it's a funding kind of you pass, or some feedback in terms of the proposal itself and how it could be fine-tuned, that we're committed to turning those around pretty quickly.
Awesome, thank you. And then any other recommendations from you, Steve, that you have for businesses who are implementing e-commerce initiatives, either for the first time implementing or deploying e-commerce, or are looking for enhanced capabilities just based on what you know in the market?
Well, I've kind of shared a lot. I mean, I defer to the rest of the panelists in terms of everybody has expertise in kind of different areas, all of which are equally important. And so I just, I've said my part, and maybe let others jump in with closing comments.
Okay, thank you. I'm just doing a quick time check. I see that we're at 1:53, and I think our commitment to those who were on the call with us today was maybe 45 minutes. But I think the kind of information that has been shared today is simply incredible, and that there are some themes that relate to brand and customer experience and customer journey, the cost of doing business as it relates to deploying e-commerce and taking a look at how do you attract new customers while retaining a loyal customer base where you might not have the foot traffic that you once had, and or you're seeing this as an opportunity to spot the opportunity, fill the gap, and certainly increase sales based on your product or service. So that has been really helpful today with the varied voices. And I think what I might do is, if it's okay with everyone, I'll maybe just do one round of rapid fire. I've got a couple of questions here. And I'm going to go in this order of panelists. So the key is to use as few words as you can, one sentence perhaps. Taking a look at the questions, I think we'll go Egan, followed by Corey, followed by Phil, followed by Stephen, Kim, and then Simon. So for the purpose of the panelists, I'm going to say it again. So we've got Egan, then Corey, Phil, Stephen, Kim, Simon. And so the first question is, what's the worst that can happen? So let's just say someone on this webcast is thinking they're all in, ready to deploy an e-commerce strategy for the first time. What's the worst that can happen, or is there a pitfall to avoid? So rapid fire, starting with you, Corey, or starting with you, Egan.
and this is in as few words. Well, luckily with Shopify, there's a free trial, so the worst that can happen is very limited.
Okay, Corey. Oh, you're on mute.
Perfect. Investing everything into that initial build and not leaving any wiggle room for customer acquisition and marketing afterwards.
Awesome. Phil?
Yeah, sort of going halfway in and then saying, and it doesn't work, and saying, well, it will never work then.
Good. Okay. Stephen?
Overestimating the inflow of revenue or sales from e-commerce and taking your eye off the ball of your core business.
Good. That's a pitfall to avoid. Kim?
It doesn't matter if you have the best product in the world. If people don't know it exists, they can't find it and you can't sell it. People are going to search for solutions, but they're not going to search for something that they don't know is out there.
Awesome. And Simon, over to you.
Yeah, if you don't follow through with your brand experience online, you're basically going to risk losing all of your loyal customers because they're going to be expecting the same experience. And you have the great opportunity to piss off way more people than you would have if you didn't have it.
Awesome. Okay, and I'm going to go with a second rapid fire because I think we did that really well. So the second question is related to strategy and related to metrics and measurement. So measurement certainly is integral to an e-commerce strategy. What technologies or techniques do you use to track your metrics aside from increased sales? So to point you in the direction that your strategy is working. So what technologies or techniques do you use to track your metrics aside from increased sales? And so we'll go back to starting with Egan.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, you got to look at, aside from sales, you got to look at your funnel, traffic to the site, bounce rate, add to cart rate, conversion rate, and then ultimately lifetime value. To know if it's working, you need to know that your customer, you're making more money off of your customer than it took to pay to get them.
Awesome. Okay, Corey?
I agree with all of those, but then also, in addition, any sort of sub-conversion, so things like email signups or phone calls, chat engagements, things that might indicate that somebody's actually interested in an engaged prospect.
Oh, the list is getting smaller. Phil, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, all that. Plus also, I'd say new to brand data, if you can get it, and conquest data. It's important.
Nice. Stephen?
Knowing your gross profit by product at a micro level in order that you can really focus on the winning products and let some stuff go.
Okay, Kim?
Yeah, it's those extra little things. So your calls, your cart abandonment, your social media, see what people are engaging in. So those peripheral numbers that you need to look at.
Awesome. And Simon, over to you to be the closer.
We look at customer satisfaction scores, NPS scores, and more extensive survey work to determine if we're actually delivering on our promise.
Right. Never underestimate the power of a good review. So to that end, as we close at the hour, certainly our customer buying patterns have accelerated e-commerce. And when customers look to you to buy from your phone instead of walking into your location, are you there to meet them? We hope that today provided all of you with the answers that you need to pivot with technology and guide customers in making easy, secure transactions from anywhere. I recognize the fact that we have a lot of questions in the Q&A, and we'll certainly pop those back out to our panelists to see whether or not there can be some support following this call. Thank you for those of you who participated in that fashion. And I certainly want to thank our industry experts who have excelled through disruption with bold transformations, have increased sales, and have bolstered brands and customer experiences. Also, thank you for sharing insights about emerging trends at the top of the call and technologies and techniques to shape the evolving marketplace. If you're ready to boost your e-commerce presence or get started on the journey, drop by our website at techalliance.ca and let's start a conversation. That's why we've got venture growth advisors available to support you. And that's it for today, everybody. Have an incredible day. Be well, take care, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.